think there's a great misnomer in the real estate industry that probably exists maybe almost uniquely in real estate. How many times have people attended what is referred to as a training session, but there's no training? They're educated, they're possibly motivated, but you wouldn't see people go into a university saying, yeah, I'm going in to be trained today. Or when our kids go to school or grandkids, yeah, they're going back to be trained some more. No, so all you can do on a Zoom meeting like this, at best, is to try to provide some education that might become consequential, and also hopefully maybe be a little bit motivational. And there, for me, is the rub, um, because I'm not a motivational speaker. As I think Dennis knows, I'm the real estate industry's only demotivational speaker. And Ruby, you seem to already know that. So you know that's good. A lot of people, because they haven't had much opportunity in their career to ever hear a demotivational speaker, it takes a while to just get your head around that, because I know all of you, and especially in Southern California, have been engaged with motivational speakers for most of your career. And for some of you, this will be the first time that you have the opportunity to hear from a demotivational speaker, somebody not looking to inspire you, but uninspire you, okay, from some of the things that I think the industry has done over the years. And so that begs the question, why did I want to become a demotivational speaker? Because years ago, I used to be invited to speak at conferences and sometimes at companies, only 4 or 5 times a year. And, and usually in occasions like this where no one had to pay for me. And by the way, speaking of paying, I just want to make this commitment as a Senior Vice President of Research and Development for the brand. Anybody that doesn't love the convention, I'm going to make a personal commitment right now. You're all going to get your money refunded. Anyway, now, and also, I also want to commit that I'm going to guarantee that all of you are going to be able to have a front row seat. Okay, so congratulations. But getting back to demotivational, so when I was invited in, Dennis, to speak at some companies, I used to, just out of curiosity, sort of like polling the room, I would say that who has been the greatest motivators in your career? And every time I'd ask that, I'd hear, well, Mike Ferry, Brian Buffini, Tom Ferry, Debbie DeGroat, Joe Stump, and so forth. Daniel Kennedy years ago, Tommy Hopkins. And it finally occurred to me, Dennis, that in all the years I asked that question, not even one time did anybody mention me.
Really?
Yeah, not once. Not once did anyone say, that would be you, Allan. And so that was like a sort of a wake-up call for me, Elaine, because when I heard that, I said, hey, wait a minute. That's probably why I'm only getting invited 2 or 3 times a year, where people are looking for somebody they don't have to pay. And so I made the decision then to go from being a motivational speaker to being demotivational. So what I did is I contacted my daughter, who's a clinical psychologist, graduated from Princeton University. I said, Jenny, Daddy wants to try to become the real estate industry's only demotivational speaker. But I want to make sure that this isn't just a pithy, sensationalistic slogan. Could you do some research? And so she did some research for me, and she got back to me and she gave me the 4 major ways, because again, everybody's telling people what to do, but no one's telling you what not to do. So she came back to me, she said, Dad, the 4 major keys to demotivating others, and some of you don't have to write these down, but you might want to make a mental note of this. Number 1, whenever you can, try to embarrass the person. Try to embarrass the buyer or the seller. So that's number 1. Okay. Number 2, the second way to demotivate somebody is to belittle them. But whenever possible, it's better if you can belittle them in front of loved ones. Now, the third way to demotivate people is to talk about yourself. And the fourth way is to try to get people to change how they think. And so when I looked at these tenets of demotivation, I asked myself, how might this apply into the most brilliant CEO the industry has ever seen, Chris Stewart's vision, okay, surrounding the forever agent, the loyalty gap, the real estate ecosystem, and now the IQ system. And in terms of how it relates to influence and value. And then because Chris has been researching, along with Amanda and others, the power of influence over the last several months, um, I asked myself, um, gee, I saw the survey and the consumers were asked to rank professions in terms of respect, and they were given 27 choices. And real estate agents came in 27 out of 27. I said, how can this be? People love real estate. How can they not love the people that makes this possible? What's this disconnect? So I asked myself, is this a matter of image or is this a matter of value? And then I said, well, let's take a look at image. When it comes to image, I don't think the industry could be in better shape. We're prodigiously photoshopped, and which is why sometimes you'll have a home seller say, geez, I thought your daughter was coming tonight. Or, geez, I thought I was going to be meeting your son, but nice to meet you. So we're prodigiously photoshopped, okay, check. We're resplendently dressed. We have agents dressing professionally during the weekend while everybody else is in Bermudas. Where we invented personal promotion along with Hollywood. And in the age of writing reviews, Dennis, you know this, we've been writing our own reviews for the last 40 years. And they're all glowing. So when it comes to image, we could not be in better shape. But now let's take a look at value. Unfortunately, many consumers perceive a real estate transaction as a fee-inflated event, which they have to subsidize in order to promulgate an inefficiently run industry. Simply put, they think they're being overcharged. And so maybe because they think they're being overcharged, that relates to the loyalty gap. Chris talks about that. 90% of people said they intend to go back to their realtor, but only 12% do. Does this value void, as Chris talks about, is this also because people haven't created their real estate ecosystem and all their value is just tied to the transaction? And also, is this what prevents people from being forever agents? Because we're an industry that will spend our whole life thinking about how we need to send out thank you notes as opposed to trying to create value so we'd receive thank you notes. And so what I've done is I'm putting together, in fact, I'm speaking at the convention. I'm going to go to get these recorded this weekend. And I'm doing 3 topics, and I'm going to give you a sneak preview. So at least you don't have to waste your time and go check me out on these classes. So I'm going to give you the highlights right now so you can check that off your schedule and you can just hear motivational speakers. The first class I'm going to talk about is influential marketing. A part of the IQ system that Chris will get into profoundly deeper aspects of it has to do with being an influential marketer. But here's the problem. When Chris Stewart down in, hold on one second, please. When Chris Stewart at the last convention acknowledged, he said, there were 6,000 agents at the convention, and Chris Stewart, who attended his keynote speech, and he said that he referred to everybody there as a CEO, okay? And he's correct, because each and every one of you who's a real estate sales and marketing executive you are responsible for your own P&L. You're responsible for your business. You are a chief executive officer. And so I completely embraced that. And I think it was very magnanimous and accurate at the same time for Chris to make that attribution. But here's a question that I would ask. If Chris had said, we have 6,000 world-class marketers in the audience, I wouldn't agree with that. If Chris had said, we've got 6,000 world-class social media savants, okay, I wouldn't agree with that. If Chris Stewart said, we've got 6,000, okay, world-class sales, whatever, okay, because there's a major difference between being responsible for your whole business versus excelling at all of the components within a business. And I believe that the real estate industry has absolutely, completely undermined every single agent in the last 50 years, their marketing evolution. And so I'm going to trace it for you. And I'm going to start off by first saying this. If somebody's going to be an influential marketer, as well as their own CEO, it must begin with asking this question. How do you define marketing? So I'd like you to take a few minutes in your mind. How do you define marketing? And I've asked that for years. Well, it's building your brand, it's personal promotion, it's giving people what you want, it's so forth and so on. It's advertising, it's personal promotion. No, it isn't. Those are all elements of it. But if you haven't first developed a resonant, comprehensive, overarching definition of marketing, then you stultifying your development for the following reasons. First of all, Shakespeare once said that the actions must suit the words, the words must suit the action. So some people who say they're doing marketing, they're not doing marketing. If somebody, for example, said that, well, marketing is giving people what they want. No, it isn't. The classic definitions at universities and Procter & Gamble is that marketing is you first determine the unmet needs of the market, and then you create goods and services to effectively respond to those needs. So how can you give people what they want? I know everyone's got a sixth sense. How could you give people what they want without doing research? Because if we had done research, we wouldn't have people who, for example, hold on one second, please. I got to turn this off. We wouldn't have people who would say this. What are you doing for marketing? And somebody would go like this. Well, I'm on supermarket carriages. Well, I'm on park benches. Well, I sent out 500 calendars. That's not marketing, because that doesn't satisfy an unmet need. Now, people who send out pumpkins make more money than people who don't do anything. I had somebody come up to me a few months ago and said, Mr. Dalton, I'm no longer on the supermarket carriages. I said, why? Why'd you change? He said, because I went home for dinner and my 12-year-old daughter was weeping. And I said, honey, what is it? And she says, Daddy, all my friends at school think you're missing. But so park benches, okay? So somebody being on a park bench, okay, and being basically graffitiized by people putting mustaches on them or whatever, somebody being on a park bench, that represents personal promotion. Now, some people may think, well, that's just semantics. But that's why there's a loyalty gap. That's why there is an influence, because we're conflating things that are from different disciplines. And so if you have your definition of marketing means, because see, when people receive a pumpkin, they don't say, gee, honey, we should be moving up. This pumpkin is great, isn't it? And so people who send out pumpkins make more money than people who don't send out pumpkins. That's a nice touch. But that's not going to get people from 27 out of 27 in terms of respect and influence and value. So that's why we've got to start thinking about, well, what is real marketing in terms of that? Well, so Confucius once said, all wisdom begins by properly naming things. Another reason why almost no one in the real estate industry is a profoundly a world-class marketer is because the industry doesn't do marketing, okay? And I'm going to give an example why. 150, 200 years ago, when somebody in LA County or Orange County, San Bernardino County wanted to sell their home, they used to get on a horse and buggy and they go to the general store, the homeowners, and there was a list. Post your home for sale. No, list your home for sale, rather. So 180 years ago, the home seller was the de facto listing agent. Now, Confucius said, all wisdom begins by properly naming things. I may not be right, but I'm absolutely convinced that every person on the Zoom meeting does more than just list a home. I think you do more than that. But Confucius would be rolling over in his grave, and Shakespeare would say, we've got to write this out of Hamlet, because in Hamlet, actions must suit the words. You're saying you're a listing agent, but you're really a marketing agent. Oh, that's just semantics, Allan. It isn't semantics, because it's stripping you of your internalization of your greater value. And when I say there's people in this industry that can outsell me 100 times over, that can buy, sell me, that are world-class salespeople, but very, very few are world-class at marketing, because it begins with that definition. Here's another example. So because even a buyer has something called a buyer agent. Hey, can we get back to that gallery view, Amanda? I'd like to see everybody. Does that make a difference, everybody? If we go back to that definition of marketing, determining the unmet needs of the marketplace, and you understand that the word marketing is important, then understand this. At least the buyer has something called a buyer agent. Which of the two sides of the transaction seem as though they're engaged with somebody providing greater value? The buyer with the buyer agent, or the homeowner with a listing agent? Now, that's amazing. Now, one of the reasons why I think about 30% of the industry self-identifies as being a realtor and not a realtor is because the most important thing that agents do and realtors do, or nothing's more important than represent a home seller. And when that's minimized and marginalized to being a listing agent, it deprives the entire industry of the opportunity to say, who's the marketing agent? I'm a marketing agent. And that results in, I'm a realtor, because no one is even saying who's the marketing realtor. We don't even use the brand equity. Now, I've never met anyone who came up to me and said, hi, Allan, I'm a doctor. I'm an architect. My daughter's an engineer. Can anyone on this Zoom meeting think of any other profession in the history of the world where people can't even pronounce their title? That's all a manifestation, going back to Confucius. All wisdom begins by properly naming things. And when you don't properly name things, kingdoms will fall and dynasties will tumble. And the perceived value of realtors has been tumbling for decades, leading to this scenario. Dennis, would you like to have $1 for every real estate agent, every realtor who said this? I just don't think people appreciate all that I do.
Yes,
I don't think homeowners really understand. Why would they? You're a listing agent. You've got the listing. Your job is over. So I don't think you can be an influential marketer. That's the first thing. If you see yourself as a listing agent, check. The next step. If you see yourself as a listing agent, that compels you to make something that's called a listing presentation. Because we don't do research. What percentage of homeowners in Southern California, if given a choice, or if you move to another state where you would now not licensed, how many of you, if you were going to now put your home on the market 5 years from now, given a choice, would want to have a colleague come over and make either a listing presentation or a marketing proposal? I think you'd prefer a marketing proposal. Everybody would. Now, what's the difference? A listing presentation is about you, your company, and what you've done. A marketing proposal is about them, what you're going to do. A listing presentation is performative. People used to go to conventions and they go up and down the exhibit aisles, like in the scene reminiscent of the trick-or-treating ritual with the little Halloween bags. They go to a booth, and there used to be things that people used to actually sell. You remember this, Dennis, the 21-point listing presentation. Because obviously everybody's the same and people want to be commoditized. So therefore you can't be an influential marketer because you're commoditizing people. So we've got to go from being listing agents to marketing agents, and it isn't just semantics. Okay, it's like that plaque, watch your thoughts and so forth and so on. Then we've got to go to marketing proposals. And we have a whole system of that in the Learning Center. Now let's see what else has to take place if somebody's going to be an influential marketer. You've got to stop buying into the conventional wisdom that actually says this. And I'm gonna be very accusatory, and because I'm not going to speak to any one person. You can accuse society, whereas I would never criticize an individual, but I will criticize something as large as a society or as an industry. Every single real estate coach, manager, broker, agent, trainer in the history of the industry have all said the same thing. And they're all completely wrong except for me. Here's what everybody has said. Either the market determines the price or the buyer determines the price. You can never be an influential marketer because according to Johann Wolfgang Goethe, the German existentialist philosopher, a century ago or so, he said, in order to do, you must first be. You can't do influential marketing if you're not an influential marketer. And I don't think you can be an influential marketer if you think the market determines the price. Why would that be, Allan? Because if the market determines the price and I've got $1 million home, why am I paying $50,000, $60,000, or $70,000? I don't get it. Because if I sold $1 million of stock with E-Trade, I paid $12. Now, how many of you would be willing to sell $1 million home for $12? How many of you would market $1 million for $12? Any takers? Of course not. That would be preposterous. But it isn't preposterous using the logic that the market determines the price. That's why stockbrokers get $12. Because the market determines the price of a stock. You can't negotiate a stock. They don't stage a stock. They don't network a stock. So the industry, and I don't mean to be harsh, but in this case, it's been the Confederation of Dunces, has taken our entire value proposition and basically diminished it to the role of somebody facilitating a transaction whose outcome is predetermined by the market. Now, somebody may think this is semantics. It isn't. It has to do with having value. It has to do with building a level of confidence in your value that you think it's impossible for somebody not to select you, which will have you invest more in your career, prospect more in your career. And you're in the most fertile real estate market in the history of the world. There's 71 towns and cities in California with more than 100,000 people. How about being the #1 agent in the capital of Vermont? Good luck. There's 8,600 people. and the average price is 200,000. So some of you that are making 50, you should be making 100, 100, 200, 300, 600. You're in the most fertile market, but you have to feel it's impossible for somebody not to be mesmerized by who you are as a marketing person. And that begins with understanding the market never determines the price, and the buyer never determines the price. They only influence it. What determines the pricing outcome? The buyer agent, the seller agent, the lender, the appraiser. Don't ever, ever again let anybody utterly eviscerate your value when you overhear them say, well, the market determines the price, which happens to be in every textbook from NAR, and I love NAR, in the last 40 years. It's either the market determines the price because it was intellectually crazy, because the market does determine the price in commodities. The market does determine the price of stocks. You could take the same home in Whittier on the market for $700,000, and you could substitute 10 different home sellers, then have 10 different buyers with the same condition of the home in the same market, and without question, you'll have 10 different outcomes, because the market has never determined the price. And I'm almost embarrassed I have to spend time with our industry on something so obvious, but it hasn't been obvious to the industry. Now, why would the industry ever champion that the market determines the price? Because therefore, that means that anybody can do what we do. Therefore, this is the easiest business to get into, but it's the hardest to be most successful at. We've got to keep the bar low. We've got to have people think we don't do much. We've got to have people think that there's nothing I can control, because we're basically saying to the home seller, I want you to pay me a lot of money, but I'm not going to be determining the outcome. I'm not going to influence it. It's already determined. That takes me to the next point. What did that lead to? If we can't absolve ourselves of any value with this, and we'll just work on image, then here's how we'll double down on destroying our value and thus our influence. Get a load of this one. Homes don't sell because of price. Homes don't sell because of price. That's another industry value killer. There's only one reason why a property doesn't sell in Southern California or anywhere in the world, and that's because of ineffective marketing. Because price is part of marketing, but marketing is not part of price. And if the only reason a home doesn't sell, Dennis, then that means the only reason the home does sell, and it eviscerates our value. Whereas if you'll tell yourself and internalize, there's only one reason why a home doesn't sell, it's because of ineffective marketing, because price is part of marketing, as opposed to homes don't sell because of price. Which mindset, and they can both be justified, which mindset do you think leads to you doing more marketing?
Not price.
Which mindset speaks to your greater value? Homes don't sell because of the price. Therefore, my ultimate value is that of an appraiser. Okay. Or homes don't sell because of marketing, because my staging, my negotiating, my merchandising, my advertising, my AdWorks, my virtual tours, that has some value. But we eviscerate all of that value by categorically and universally informing every brand in the industry. The biggest reason homes don't sell is because of price. Oh, the only reason, oh, well, John, do you think it could have been about staging? Oh, no, even if there's horrible staging, if you lower the price enough, somebody would still have bought it. Gee, do you think the home didn't sell because it was ineffective negotiating? Oh, that doesn't matter. You can have the worst negotiator in the world. Doesn't matter, Allan. Lower the price enough, somebody will buy it. Allan, you could have 5 dead bodies in the basement out here in the East, and if you lower the price enough, somebody's going to buy it. And so it basically killed and reduced all industry value 27 out of 27, because we're not influential marketers, because it begins with how you think. Okay, so these are just some of the things that we've got to make some changes in terms of having value, because again, here's what happened when we, for last 100 years, this was the strategy. Let's make sure that real estate professionals never have value. And here's how we'll do it. Every time a property doesn't sell, let's come up with a concept that the industry can never be blamed. See, in all my years in real estate, I've never had any of my agents have gone into a real estate company and overheard somebody saying, yeah, these homes didn't sell because I stink. Oh yeah, this home didn't sell because I'm horrible at what I do. Oh no, no, every home that hasn't sold because the home seller wanted more, every home that hasn't sold in the last 100 years is categorically because of the home seller. So we've come up with a way to make sure that every home seller in history is thrown under the bus. And because it's their fault for wanting too much and not capitulating to my impeccable and infallible pricing wisdom, because these delusional home sellers all wanted too much, that means the greatest skill I've got to develop as a realtor is price reductions. And then if that doesn't work, every single home that didn't sell because the homeowner wouldn't go with a lower price, because it could never, because there was a marketing gap. And because we blame homeowners for why every home doesn't sell, that's why we don't get credit for when they do sell, because you can't have it both ways. And then speaking of demotivating, to make it even worse in terms of our value, and I told you, Dennis, I'm demotivating. I hope you see it. I hope I'm demotivating everybody. Then the next point is this. 100% of the industry has actually at some time in their career, get a load of this, use the word comps. Going to a homeowner in LA County and actually having the nerve to say to them, let's take a look at some comparable homes, or let's take a look at some similar homes to the subject property, is the same thing as saying, let's take a look at some similar children. There's no difference. And every homeowner in the history of California has all said the same thing. But they don't have our view, Dennis. But they're not as close to Route 10. They're not as close to the 405. They don't have a new kitchen. This has been going on for 100 years, this dance. Okay? And we have, most of the industry has actually used the expression, let's take a look at some similar homes, or let's take a look at the comps, and they're actually including homes that they haven't even visited. It doesn't get any more perverse. Now, what should you say? Let me for 1 minute try to be a little motivational. What should you say? Folks, let's take a look at properties at the same time. Let's take a look at properties that buyers will be evaluating at the same time they're evaluating your home. We don't have to insult people. We don't have to embarrass people. We don't have to belittle people, okay? We have to raise our value. But again, but this was like a conspiracy to bring down value. The market determines the price, so that's just my value there as a marketing person. The market versus me, the marketer. Number two, homes are sold because of price. That's the appraiser. That's not my value, okay? And then to basically be intellectually lazy, let me commoditize your home and say it's like all the others or kind of similar, which is disingenuous, because if that same agent was showing a buyer that very property and the buyer said it's not for us, no realtor would ever say, oh, let's go take a look at some similar homes, because they know they're not similar. They're all completely distinctive. Now, they can be in the same value, they can be in the same value range, but where did the industry come off with the nerve of telling people these are comps? These are similar homes in terms of that. So that's one area. So one area that I think, and again, this is more educational and demotivational than training or inspiring. But now I want to go to the next thing I'm going to talk about at the convention, and that has to do with influential content. Everybody on this Zoom meeting, I'm sure at some time in their career, has heard the expression, content is king. Well, I'm going to give you my definition that's a little bit more gender neutral. My definition is this: content has consequences. So I coined the word contentsequences. Okay. Now, why is content so important? Here's why it's so important. Now, 70% of companies have very sophisticated content marketing plans, but most realtors don't, because even though they're CEOs, they're not running a company that they can hire SEO gurus, social media savants, okay, ad executives, marketing executives. And so that means that people get swept away with the prevailing thinking. Okay, and I'm going to tie two concepts together: influential content and influencing your community. Dennis, would you agree with me that a lot of the industry is still using this term, geographical farms?
Yes.
Okay. Now, obviously, the music man of Southern California, Tommy Hopkins, okay, he was the one who introduced farming, right, Dennis?
Yes. Correct.
And God bless him, and he was unbelievably successful and a very charismatic sales trainer and wonderful human being.
Yes.
But here's what happened. That word has also completely stripped out all the influence from the industry, and I'll tell you why. Let's understand how geographical farming took place in its relationship to influence. What percentage of your agents, Dennis, would you say are doing geographical farming?
Between 15 and 20%.
Okay, 15 to 20%. When I first came into the business many decades ago, the average company then had 95% of companies had only one office, and they only had between 8 and 12 agents in an office. Okay. And so here's what happened. And most of them lived in the same town. So back then, the way in which a broker owner would avoid conflict and basically rescue people from a pathologically competitive environment was to encourage cooperation and civility. And one way of doing that is, back then, people used to actually, by the broker, be assigned their farm. Now, Dennis, you don't assign people farms, do you?
No, we do not.
That's exactly right. Because it would probably be considered unethical in a restraint of trade. So here's what I remember happening years ago. I came into the office and I overheard a conversation. The agent's name was Susan. She was talking to Bob. Hey, Bob, I'm going to be getting a listing on Grove Street. Whoa. Susan, slow down. That's my farm area. Well, Bob, Susan, that's my farm area. But Bob, these are my cousins. It doesn't matter. That's my farm. Maybe we can talk to the broker and we can work out a referral or something, but that's my farm area. Now, back then, when you had 8 agents, and the average town size of a town out east was like 10 or 15,000 people, maybe somebody would pick a geographical farm of 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. But here's the problem. Geographical farms aren't as much of a community as people, for example, people who live in Newport Beach are more likely to go all over the world having an attachment to the community of Newport Beach than Newport Beach Estates, which is somebody's farm. Somebody has a housing development, that's a farm. One of the reasons why Congress people get reelected over 95% of the time, and realtors 12% of the time, and again, this is educational, is that real estate agents for the last 50 years think and speak in terms of the following: that they serve the community. You'll see on websites, serving the local community for 20 years. But here's the problem. People who serve the community don't have anywhere near the influence of those who represent the community. Congress people don't serve the community. They represent it. Real estate agents are only used to the term represent when it comes to agency. I represent my seller. I represent my buyer. The vast percentage of real estate agents aren't painting on a large enough canvas geographically. It doesn't scale. For example, if there's 50,000 people in town and there's 2,000 in my farm, which is also 20 other agents' farms, what is the likelihood for me to have people connect to me who might like my values? I'm from the East, I have a Boston accent, I like sports or whatever, versus trying to have people within the 50,000 all connect to me. So when Steve Jobs said the biggest mistake people make is they do market segmentation versus desegmentation, that they should be looking at the largest swath of commonality and desegment. Now, that would mean that somebody should be thinking of representing their community than serving their community. Congress people get reelected 95% of the time. Restaurants who serve the community don't stay in business 95% of the time. Florist shop, because they're serving the community. Now, if somebody's a governor, they're going to get reelected less. Why is that? Because there's more of a myriad of beliefs and values within a state. And so there's more divisiveness. So every real estate agent who wants to exponentially increase their influence should be asking themselves this: would I have more influence if instead of serving the community or instead of serving my farm, I represented the entire town? I represented the other city. Or if you had 10 people doing the same thing. So now they're painting a larger geographical canvas, but now you've got to say, okay, what's your political platform? The only way we have access to people is through their concerns. And the one uniform, universal concern of everybody in Whittier, or La Habra, who lives there and owns a home, are their home values. Would you agree with me, Dennis?
Yes, absolutely.
Therefore, that has to become the political platform for agents who understand now I'm limited if I'm serving the community. I can quadruple my income if I'm representing the community, because the one thing that everybody in the community is unified on is the future of their home values. And that's what the congressperson would do. They'd attach themselves to the single most powerful resident view that the preponderance of people who live in their district believe in. But they'd be reelected 100% of the time if their platform was home values. And so, because when you think about it, here's serving the community. Well, Allan, I helped organize the July 4th parade. Well, I donated to the library. I donated to the charity. I work for the United Way. I teach at the schools. I coach Little League. But guess who else does that? Hundreds of other people in the town. Because a doctor can serve the community, a teacher can serve the community, a lawyer can serve the community, but there's only one person, there's only one vocation in America that people can represent the community. And that's real estate agents. And real estate agents are too busy representing home sellers and serving the community than representing the entire community. And therefore, this stultifies their influence. And so I have a lot of ways that people could better represent, and I'm going to get into them in the next week when we come back. But there's ways that it has to be established. The only way, for example, see, somebody may do 15 homes in Whittier, but there's 85,000 people in Whittier. So somebody sells 15 homes. They have basically no influence in Whittier. They'd never be reelected as a congressperson, okay? And so now I'm saying this. I created a website years ago. I have nothing to do with it anymore. It's defunct. It was called Town Advisor. Because I asked myself this question. Where do people go for hotel information? They go to TripAdvisor. Where do people go for home improvement? They go to Home Advisor. Do you think it's as clear to the public where to go to decide on the town, Dennis?
No, not as clear.
No. The industry has spent 99% of its time serving communities. The industry is more interested in listing homes than listing towns. Let me give you an analogy. Say somebody has a farm, it's a subdivision, and Tommy Hopkins was all over that stuff. Let's say somebody had a subdivision. That's my farm, okay? La Habra Estates or whatever. Let's say the homeowners association came to that realtor because there's 10 people farming there, 3 of whom who live there who now say they're La Habra specialists, which consumers have developed antibodies towards, okay? And let's say that the homeowners association contacted, I see Elaine here, contacted Elaine and said, Elaine, the homeowners association would like to hire you, pay you $150,000 a year to be the marketing director for the homeowners association in this development. Do you think if they hired Lorraine and paid her $150,000 for that subdivision, Dennis, you think it would have occurred to Elaine, I must do a video on the development?
Yes.
Of course it would. But 99% of agents haven't done, I'm not talking about little things, driving down the bicycle. I'm here at the Bakery with Bob, okay, on YouTube. I'm talking about world-class videos of the community, okay? 99.9 have never done that. And I'll send you links to what I mean. I'm not talking about these little stupid things. I'm talking about the nuances. Only a realtor can do that. A tourism bureau can't do that. They're just going to show people eating cotton candy on the boardwalk. They're not going to get into schools and reports and clubs and commutes and climate and all this stuff, and with beautiful prose. So that's just a thought. Because when we talk about influence of the community, in the IQ system, there'll be 1,500 little things, I'm sure. Do this, join this, join this. Put your business card at the library in the books. Go to the high school football game. When people stand up, throw your business cards. I'll leave that to others. But I'll have this celebration, that celebration. Send people congratulations when their kids graduate. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about visibility. I'm talking about taking over an entire town. Now, I did a video for Realtor. You can check her out. Her name is Julie Vanderbilt. This year, she's on target to make between $1.5 million and $2 million, okay, in a market that the average agent makes 50 grand, because she's got 9 world-class videos, loops at open houses, advertise the story. Because here's what we're seeing happening in the market right now, Dennis. Guess where the industry's been for the last 2 or 3 years? And it's to be expected because we love personal promotion. The industry is actually gravitating more to what no consumer wants. The industry is gravitating to, get a load of this, telling their story. I've got to tell my story, okay? I've got to tell my story because I won a Nobel Peace Prize. I've got to tell my story, okay, because I saved 15 people's lives off the coast there. We are obsessed. We are so much more focused in telling our story than the story of the community. And the only way an agent can become the talk of the town is to talk about the town. We're talking more about our listings because the town doesn't pay us. No one on the Zoom meeting is going to be hired by the town. You've got to hire yourself. And you've got to let the town or the community, the city know there's a new marketing sheriff in town. Because if I knocked on the door of everybody in any of your towns and said, which real estate agent does the best job of marketing the value of this city, of the town, they'd have to stop and think. And so maybe this is common sense to people, but I think a lot of realtors are still more focused on serving the community. That's their value add. Join organizations, join clubs, join this, join that. That's fine. You'll make more money. But if you want to monumentally increase your influence, it's representing. Now, the last thing I'll talk about is influential, this content. Okay. What's happening is this. I believe, and I hope I'm proven to be demotivational, because Dennis, as you'd expect from somebody from the Northeast, I discovered about 5 years ago, the very best thing I do in my life is to criticize others. Okay. And so I'm trying to monetize that. And so here's what I want to talk about: content. This is so important. Most people come into the industry. Our industry is not the most strategic, and I include myself. I graduated from college, but when I was in high school, when I turned 16, they asked me to bring up my parents. My father was working, so my mother wanted. I thought, gee, they're going to celebrate my birthday. We went into the principal's office, and the principal said, "Mrs. Dalton, just so you know, not everybody's cut out for high school." And my mother said, "You mean college? No, high school." Because I wasn't strategic. I lived day by day. I grew up in the streets like a savage. I didn't plan. I didn't organize. That's just how it was. All right. So now what I'm saying is that the industry is populated by people that are equally non-strategic. Here's what I mean. How many people in our industry do you think when they were in high school or college had a strategy that they were going to come in and sell real estate? Very few. Do you think more people had a strategy to be a doctor, lawyer, entertainer, athlete? Absolutely. And then because we're in a straight commission, instant gratification, transaction to transaction driven industry, people are compelled to be always tactical. They don't have the time to sit for 2 weeks around a conference table brainstorming. And they'll take from the coaches or whatever. As a consequence, there's a lot of misguided use of content. For example, how many people would you guess, Dennis, go to the internet? Or Amanda, how many people do you think go to the internet? You know, I'm not going to play Jeopardy here. I'll tell you.
A lot.
4.4 billion. Guess how many people go to YouTube? Over 2 billion. Guess how many lifestyle stories are on Instagram? 500 million. So here's the whole thing. Is it easier for agents to introduce? Is it easier for agents to influence some of these 7 billion people that come online, or the 2 billion that go to YouTube? Or if there's 20,000 homeowners in their city, or 7,000 homeowners in their town, which group might be easier to reach and influence? The homeowners. So when people talk about community of shared values and whatever, there's no community, there's no network. Everybody on Facebook put together, to me, doesn't even have a scintilla of the value of all the people who own homes in Whittier. And yet, agents are being monetized more than they're doing the monetizing. And so very strategic people with software programs have co-opted, subsumed, commandeered the way in which realtors are doing business. And a lot of realtors are imitating the online propensity and addiction that a lot of high school kids have. While all the while, there's 15,000 homeowners who haven't been aggregated, because realtors are still thinking about friends, followers, and they're not putting the equal laser focus on the biggest, most valuable network in the world, the network of home sellers who live in your communities. That's the only network that matters. And I'll tell you why. There's no way anybody on the Zoom has enough money rather, to redirect the home search of millions of buyers. That genie is out of the bottle. The search engine optimization genie is out of the bottle. So the only way you can have a disproportionate amount of buyers is either A, to have listings, open houses, ads, or two, you're going to have to pay what you call a referral, or you pay for lead, which I've described as a tariff. And you can Google my video I did 20 years ago, Say No to Real Estate Tariffs, which foretold everything that's happening right now. So there's no way that you can ever control the buying side. You don't know where they're coming from with any precision. The only thing you can control is the selling side, the marketing side. And now what's happening is that the listing side is going to be under monumental attack for the next 20 or 30 years. When people talked about disruption, disintermediation 20 years ago, the elimination of the middle person, it didn't happen. What happened instead was disruption, but only the buying side was disrupted, and that wasn't onerous. It allowed listing rainmakers to form real estate teams, because now the destiny of buyer traffic could be managed and directed. Brokers could reduce their advertising. Buyers don't generate listings, and listings do. And when I was CEO of Realtor.com, 98% of the people who came clicked on Find a Home, only 2% clicked on Find a Realtor, and they were realtors. And so, but the 98% of people ended up with buyers, but they ended up with buyers at a price. A lot of advertising, referrals, or leads. The only place that third-party portals, and those I refer to as cyberspace carpetbaggers, can further monetize their sites is to take over the listing side first point of contact. That's going to kill a lot of listing rainmakers. Unless they preemptively inoculate that, okay, by intensely focusing these home sellers. So I'm going to give you 7 programs, content we have within the Berkshire Hathaway Learning Center and Marketing Centers and Business Centers, okay? I forget all the names they give everything, but it's there, okay? Here are the programs. Number one, and these are ones that I've written and Wendy Duran and her genius has produced. The first program I brought to Berkshire Hathaway Home Services as the Senior Vice President of Research and Development, when I got away from my deep motivational focus, and now I try to have a positive impact. The first one was the Real Estate and Lifestyle Planning Guide. The industry right now is still actually talking about 2 words, and they're the wrong words. They're still actually, and every coach is still saying the same thing. They're talking to you about your database. Database is a fool's errand. I could have the largest database in Southern California next week. I could buy the voter registration rolls from the Democratic and Republican Party. Okay. And I could walk around like a peacock, Dennis, for the next month. I've got the biggest database in California. A year later, I'm going to walk around as a feather duster, because there's no value. Because I used to hire former mayors who had a great sphere of influence, but they couldn't influence this sphere about real estate. They didn't have influence. They didn't have real estate influence. Thank God. When people talk about sending out pumpkins, thank God that's not influence, because if that was the case, Dennis, if the key to this business was sending out pumpkins, then after this meeting, you should go to Google. You should Google this: LA County pumpkin farms. You should go visit the owner and say, by the way, ma'am or sir, you've got a son and a daughter. They can make a fortune in real estate, because not only can they send out pumpkins, they can send out the best pumpkins. Because the key to having influence and making money in real estate is sending out pumpkins. And then you can go to the calendar factory and you can say, hey, by the way, leave this business. Thank God this business is that simple. But what's going to happen is that here's the problem. You've got to evolve your database to a client base. That's why realtors can't sell their business. Because they're still dealing with this. They used to actually have conventions, customers for life. No one has customers for life. Even Marriott Rewards, people go to different hotels. But people have one doctor, one dentist, one financial planner, but they've got 5 real estate agents. How do we put an end to this random real estate roulette? You convert your database to your client base. How do you do that? You go into the center, you peruse the lifestyle planning guide. It's PDF, it's physical. You go to your database for now, you get everybody's name, get their email address, get their physical, and you either mail or you email the 20-something page planning guide, because here's what happens. What percentage of people regret not owning enough real estate? Almost everybody. What percent have ever developed a real estate plan for life? None of them. Because we're an inside-out industry instead of outside-in, it's like what we want. That's why we want listings. We make listing presentation. They want them home. It doesn't matter what you want. So because of that, we have arrived 20 years ago. As I mentioned, Mike Ferry dedicated his book to me. And I remember years ago, he was all over business planning before anybody else. And I think he's helped more people make more money than everybody put together. But the industry has arrived at, we should be doing business planning. At some point in time, we'll get to let's help the consumer do planning. We're not there yet, but that's where we need to go. See, if you went to medical school, you wouldn't go learn how to just do MRIs on yourself. Okay, so the whole idea is the lifestyle planning guide with a letter. Dear folks, I work with my clients and helping them. A lot of people end up regretting enough real estate. A lot of people end up regretting not owning enough real estate, and yet most people don't have a plan. A lot of people wish they bought differently, or they buy whatever. I would love to help you plan for your real estate future. But in the meantime, here's a self-help guide that I think you could find interesting. Now, what does that do? It basically elevates you from a drive-by shooter. It elevates you from just being transactional. It elevates you from advertising when you're ready to buy, sell a home. Give me a call. Gee, what a sport. Okay. And basically, you're converting. What you're basically doing is you're converting people. People become Jewish, Protestant, Catholic, Buddha, Muslim, okay, all different religions, or atheists. And it's not as though they had to go through this incredible ritual. They made it because somebody invited them. Realtors say people aren't loyal because we're not loyal to them. How many people have you invited to be your agent for life instead of just advertising it? Can you imagine Elaine, a financial planner, saying to somebody, I'd like to be your financial planner, but I don't do any financial plans. Oh, I'd love to be your financial planner, but I don't do any financial planning. Oh, I'd like to be your agent for life, but I'm not involved with plans for life because I've got so much pressure to resolve. So I'm going to be in a perpetual state of prospecting to let the whole community know I don't have any clients. I'm constantly looking for people. That's what we have to do. So I'm encouraging you, go and learn about the Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Real Estate and Lifestyle Planning Guide, which is so congruent with the perceived culture of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. The next program. Some of you have gone to open houses, and I don't know if people still do this in California, but in the East, we still have agents who actually ask people to sign in. I don't know if you still do, okay? But in the East Coast, people don't like to sign in. And because they don't like to sign in, they write their name so you can't read it. Or they'll put a phony name. But here's how you get around that. You don't ask people to sign in, you ask them to sign out. And you know why they sign out? Because when they first come to the open house, you don't say the worst thing in the history of the world. Are you working with an agent? Because if you're working with an agent, you get different treatment. You don't get to see the bathrooms. Okay, so I've got to find that out because it's all about me. And if I'm going to make money from you, are you working with an agent? So instead of saying, are you working with an agent, at some point in time, You might say, hey, as you take your tour, there might be some things that aren't as obvious that you can put on. Just let me know. Oh, and by the way, do you folks have either children or pets? Now, if somebody says that's none of your business, you weren't going anywhere because that says they don't like you. And maybe it's because you asked, you're working with somebody. But here's the point. But you can say to them, do you have children or pets? Oh, no, we have pets. We have for you a guide that's been developed for you that you can put your picture and contact information, moving with pets without them being peeved. Pet owners love it. And then they're going to give you their email. That's the all-time icebreaker in the history of real estate, because people like their pets more than they like signing in. People like their children more than they like realtors. So we have something moving with. So what content are you bringing? Because content has consequences. Because with artificial intelligence, if you don't have more value, knowledge and wisdom that goes beyond a Google search, if you don't make a distinction between trying to go, people talk about search engine. I came up with a different term, Dennis, seek engine optimization. You're not going to, search has become the modern day version of floor time. You've got to use content to seek. Whether you go door to door, you physically mail. A friend of mine, I put this in my little speech here. A friend of mine, I ran into a year or so ago at a conference, and after talking about some things, I asked, how'd you do last year? And she said, well, I made $1,200,000. I had the best year. I made $1,200,000. Again, in a market that the average agent makes 50 grand. Her name's Gada Abasi. You can Google her. I says, God, she's with Coldwell Banker out in New Jersey. I says, Gada, how did you do it? She goes, well, Allan, don't share this with other agents in New Jersey. Okay, but what I'm doing is I send out 16,000 postcards a month. Cost me 125 grand a year, and I made over $1 million just on that with listings, because I have the special deal with the post office. That's seek. It isn't search, isn't it, Dennis? That's right. Seek, not search. Okay. Oh, but by the way, let's get a load of her content. Let's get a load of her content. Oh yeah, these were the two greatest ideas of all time. This is going to blow you away. Number one was this: find out what your home is worth. Oh my God, what a breakthrough. Oh, how did she come up with that one? Find out what your home is worth. And the other one was this: looking to sell your home. So we have people going to Inman, going this one, that one, going to classes, okay? She probably does more postcards, Dennis, than some of your offices together.
Wow.
And here's the whole point. The average home in your market is about what? 600,000, 700,000, 500. What is it, Dennis?
It's right around 650.
Okay, so you're almost 300% more than the national average. People move there every 7 or 8 years. The last time I checked, the average home in Arkansas was like 80 grand, and people move every 27 years. But if somebody wants to send out a postcard in Arkansas, do you realize, Dennis, it costs the same amount of money as for you? So yes. You automatically have like a 20-time greater returning investment, but people would rather spend money for a lead from Zillow of a buyer than spend that same amount of money getting 1,000 people the lifestyle planning guide. I don't know, with a bucket to each, getting 1,000 people with a letter, and you'll make hundreds of thousands of dollars on that, hundreds in your marketplace. Bring them moving with pets to the open house. Bring moving with children. I created a brochure with Wendy called Downsizing by Distinction. I just finished, you'll be receiving this. Move, improve, or relocate. Because here's the need for that. Chris Stewart talks about the real estate ecosystem. Here's the way the industry runs right now. Somebody goes to everything's different with COVID, so forget my antiquated analogies, but somebody's at a soccer game, okay? and they talk to somebody, and the person says, "How's the real estate market?" Now, the very same person who advertises on their website, they're a trusted advisor. Get a load of this one. Actually says it's unbelievable. Oh, it's great. Because how could anyone not realize they're a trusted advisor? What advice? What knowledge? What profound insight? Okay. It's great. Okay. And that's basically a conversation killer. It's a room clearer. So now let's say instead somebody said, well, thanks for asking. We're in a very opportunistic marketplace here in Southern California. There are great opportunities for both buyers, sellers, and investors. Now I'd like to ask you a question. When do you think you might be making your next real estate move? Because you can ask that because they asked you. Well, probably in a year. What would be the reason, Dennis? We think we're going to be moving because our youngest son's going off to university. Well, great, congratulations. Hey, let me say this though, Dennis. Dennis, it's probably too soon to start getting together about marketing your home. But let's try to get together sometime over the next few months and start a merchandising strategy, which 99% of realtors would never say because they only use the word staging, and it would be premature for staging. This could be a new kitchen, whatever. Why don't we get together over the next month or two and start planning a merchandising strategy? Boy, this sounds like a trusted advisor to me. Now, by the way, when I get back to the office, when I get back to my computer, I'm going to send you a copy about our program on downsizing. Now I get over there in a month, and I notice they have a dog. And then I give them moving with pets. All things being equal, when they decide to move in a year, who's going to get the listing in the new sale? I am. It's not going to be the trusted advisor who dispense with their profound wisdom. How's the market? It's unbelievable. As if somebody did a Google search and said, how's the Malibu market? That's going to come up first in either the organic or paid results. Hello. I mean, so that's the importance of content. If we don't basically use content for open houses, for direct mail, on video, all the content, 10 things you need to know before selecting your realtor for home sellers. That can be broken into list. That can avoid you creating a text wall. Okay. You can have snippets. You can have series. You can do that in your blog. Okay. But the biggest thing is don't be expecting everybody to find you. It's from the 4.4 billion people, hundreds of millions of dollars are being invested so they won't find you. You've got to be smart enough and strategic enough to use our content, your results, your credibility in the most fertile market in the world to use this content. Email, direct mail. I created a program called Neighbors Know Best. It's rejection-free prospecting. You can go knock on the doors of neighbors, get your exercise while you're at it, have your mask on, and let people, you're marketing one of their neighbors' homes, and the best form of advertising is peer reviews. And obviously they for me, they'll probably think it's a PAR because of my accent, but you'll say that word better. And that's the whole key here. So those are the three things. And if you still want me to come back, I'm going to get deeper into language for FSBOs, expired, how to close buyers, how to handle objections, how to deal with fee challenges. But I wanted to first paint the overview that we've got to be more influential at marketing. It begins with defining it and basically attacking some of the self-limiting concepts that haven't changed in the last 100 years. Then we talked about influential community, and that's the whole idea of not just serving the community, finding ways to have everybody in town, you're fighting for all home values. And the third one was to use the influential content to basically use seek engine technology, AdWorks, Chalk Digital, to preempt search engine technology. So Dennis, that's been my message today. I hope it was helpful, at least a little bit.
Allan, it is. Let me just share a quick 2-minute wrap up. So thank you. First off, everybody on the call, something really profound, but utilize it. If you've ever been traveling and you're on a plane or whatever, and you're saying, and ask somebody where they're from, and they say, such as like, I live in Whittier, California, say, or Whittier, you get excited about your community when you're traveling, even though you may be across the country or other places. The point is, but Allan's point is how people get excited about their community. We need to do a better job of promoting and marking that area.
Hey, Dennis, before you go on, let me add one point to this because I think it's very relevant and it's deserving of my bad manners by interrupting you.
Oh, go ahead, Allan. It's fine.
This isn't too important for me to restrain myself. Okay. I want to give everybody a little bit of a greater sense of these communities. I spent 4 years on that when I left Realtor.com. This has been my exception. The only thing in my entire real estate career that I've ever loved is describing people's towns. It brings tears to their eyes. If you go to this website, Julie Vanderblue, go to her website, you'll see a thing that says communities, and click on the town profiles that I wrote. Homeowners to a person, they have tears in their eyes because I forensically slave over and here's how I approached every town video as a SWOT analysis. Okay. So for example, if I'm taking Whittier, okay, there may be, so here's my whole philosophy. When somebody says, how are you different? I always recommend to say this, Amanda, rather than focusing on how I'm different, I'd rather focus on how we have to make your property different. You see, I don't compete against other agents in LA County as much as your home competes against other homes. I actually cooperate with all the other realtors, but your home doesn't cooperate with the other homes. It actually competes. But not only does your home compete against other homes, Whittier is competing against other towns. Would you agree with that, Dennis?
Yes, absolutely.
So now I'm alerting the homeowner that I'm able to get away from a selfie culture, that I can actually put my focus on what they have to be able to convince versus me. I transcend myself. And then as I looked at towns, I'll give an example. I did one for the state, New Jersey. If I did a survey and asked people, list the 5 states you would never want to live in, and you gave them all 50 and you gave them a day to think about it, I think New Jersey would be, for a lot of people, in their top 5. I lived there for years. I know what I'm speaking of, even though I'm Boston. So I was driving down the New Jersey Parkway, thank you, Brenda. I was driving down the New Jersey Parkway and I saw a picture of Albert Einstein. And it occurred to me the 2 most notable geniuses in the history of America, Albert Einstein and Thomas Edison, both voluntarily moved to New Jersey. So I wrote a script and we produced a video called A Move to New Jersey, A Genius Decision. Okay. Now, in writing the script, I do a SWOT analysis. What are the strengths, weaknesses of the town? Because what you have to do is you've got to countervail perceptions. The number one thing I focused on is this. If you didn't have the data, you could spend the rest of your life and you would never think what I'm going to say is true, but Google it. Today, it could be number 2 or 3 now. When I did the video, the number 1 state in America for mental health was New Jersey. Geez, I didn't know that. Who would think after seeing The Sopranos, Snooki, okay, the oil refineries, comedians getting up there, you know the slogan for New Jersey? What died? Okay, whoever would have thought that New Jersey, in the same time that New Jersey was number 1 in mental health, guess what state was last? Montana. Now, what person would ever think, you know what? I want to go to New Jersey. I'm having a lot of stress. Who in Montana would ever say, geez, I got to get out of Montana. I have so much stress. I got to move to New Jersey. That was number 1. Number 2, New Jersey was number 1 at that time in per capita income. New Jersey was number 1 in test scores. New Jersey was the home of the equestrian headquarters. It was the home of the golf headquarters, okay? There's towns with 10-acre minimum zoning. It was named the 2nd freshest drinking water in the country. Because what I'm doing is I'm countervailing all of the reasons why somebody might, if they're being transferred to Manhattan, we're going to move to So you've got to take a look. Now, for example, it's not about why people should move to Whittier, La Habra, or any of the towns. It's why they may not. You've got to countervail that. There may be some people that want to be closer to the ocean. Am I making sense, Dennis? So that's why you've got to be able to sell the benefits in such a way that a person says, oh my God, I could never have my home on the market if somebody doesn't see this video. Oh, Amanda, who's going to see it? Everybody who comes through me in my open house. See, the video is not going to cause people to want to come to Whittier, but once it's on their radar, then they're going to want to live here. Because I don't have $7 million on SEO, so everybody who puts in, this comes up first in search results. But I'm going to make sure that every buyer who comes through me, I'll also link to the buyer. Now, some of the buyer agents aren't going to want to show it, because if their buyer is also a home seller, because they're going to be embarrassed. They don't have anything like this themselves, okay? But the whole point is this, then to start promoting that. And when people come to open houses, can you email me that? And so I'm glad you said that, Dennis, but it's not just, because here's the problem. The industry only uses 5 words to describe all homes. Your home is beautiful, lovely, charming, spacious, and elegant. Every property only has 2 expressions. You've heard it. How about this? Park-like setting and professionally landscaped. So we're an industry that resorts more to visuals. For years, we advertised MEIK, Modern Eating Kitchen. So when you do these videos, you have to, the prose has to be so evocative. Like when I wrote the video on the town I'm in, Fairfield, Connecticut, I wrote it like this: Fairfield, Connecticut, romantically and recreationally situated adjacent to the ecologically flourishing Long Island Sound. Now, no one in town says, I live in Fairfield. We're romantically and recreationally situated adjacent to the ecologically flourishing Long Island Sound. But if you're going to show pictures of boats going by, lighthouses, it can't be, oh, it has a beautiful coastline. Oh, I'm here, these have to be like aerial America. And so I'm glad that you brought us back to that, Dennis. But if I had one way that you can influence, it's by representing, because if you look up, if you Google the word representation, the first thing comes up is portray. Congress people do not technically, the Congress people do not have a fiduciary responsibility to the people in their district. That's why they can bring in a prison. They can bring in a cell tower. So they don't fiduciary, but what they're doing is that they're representing their interest. And that's why we have divisiveness in Washington. Use these anthropological thoughts to take over markets and towns. Thank you. Sorry for the encore.
No, it's okay. Real quickly, Alan, I'm going to have Thomasine end it, but and I want to share this. Alan, I know you're a demotivator, but actually you motivated me, so thank you. And here's for the people on the call today, and this is good for 10 days. You need to print out the lifestyle planner and mail it out to minimum of 25 or up to 50. So I will pay for your, I will reimburse your mail-outs. I will reimburse your packages because you're on the call. So, you know, our CFO is going to kill me, and Susie, my admin is going to kill me. So you got to do this from 25 or more up to 50. We will reimburse your postage to your sphere of influence. So
hey, Dennis, I want to give my email because I want somebody, at least one, to send me one. I want to receive it. Okay. It's Allan. It's Allan.
All right.
Allan Dalton at H as in Harry, S as in Sam, franchise.com.
Right. Susie, you got that, Susie? Yeah. Allan Dalton, HSF franchise.
hsfranchise.com.
Okay. So, and Allie, our technology administrator, is teaching it on Saturday at 10 o'clock. So I'm promoting for that class as well. And so, Susie, you'll get that on the chat that we will pay for, or excuse me, we will reimburse. So you got to take action first. We will reimburse your mail, your postage costs on that. Minimum of 25, up to 50. And if you go above 50, I'm open-minded to negotiate, my friends. I'm going to say thank you for being on the call. And I'm going to turn it over to Thomasina for closing. Thomasina Mulhern, So you'll close out this meeting, and thank you for being on the call.
Allan, thank you so much. We so enjoyed your presentation at the last convention, and happy to have you. And congratulations to over 100 people that tuned in. And
Right.
hope to make use of this.
Plus, they're at the offices. There's some small groups at a few offices as well. So, but come see.
So I know you've been welcomed, and at your next time we'll return to see you. Hope to see you in person soon. Anyway,
As do I. Hey, listen, all of you are blessed to just be living in Southern California. You can't beat it. You don't want to see what it's like outside here right now. And that's why people, I always used to say to people, it's not that people in California are nicer than the East Coast, but they're in a lot better mood. Okay. The last time I had dinner in New York about 1.5 years ago, here's what the waiters do after you've had dinner. They bring the check, they go like this. Was anything okay?
All right, everybody. Thank you for being on the call. Allan, you're a winner, and we're appreciative of you, my
pleasure.
friend.
Thank you.
We
You got
will
to win it with
next
Amanda.
Thursday. Next Thursday, 1:30
Thank you,
again.
Christina. Thank you,
And thank-
Christina.
And thank you, Amanda. And thank you for the technology help with Susie here at the corporate office.
Thank
and
you,
all of
Susie.
you at the agents back in your offices or at home. Thank you for being on our team. God bless.
Okay, thank you. Bye now.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.